Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing a long-term 24 months review of the Panasonic GX80 or Panasonic GX85. And let me give you my top 5 reasons as to why I think this is still the best minimalist camera even in 2020. Let's get into it. Reason number 1, the ratio that you get performance to the budget that you invest in terms of having this camera. Right now, there's a hype going on. Everybody wants to have full frame cameras. Understandably, they are better for some reasons, but the hype is definitely moving into the full frame direction, which means very good that the lenses and the actual systems for Micro Four Thirds are going down in price. Okay, so the money that you invest and the features that you get out of this camera, which I'm going to get into in a second, make it very, very worth it. Which nicely brings me into the second reason as to why I think this is super, super good. It has amazing in-body stabilization. This is as good as the Panasonic GH5, which is currently like the top of the line video camera that Panasonic produces, except it's in a much smaller package and it works really well. One of my most favorite things, and something that is frequently overlooked in terms of why these kind of cameras are actually very good in terms of going out there and capturing the natural story or the natural beauty of anything, is because when you come somewhere, when you go somewhere with a full frame, big camera, big rig, anyone who you're filming, any story that you're trying to tell, a lot of people are actually not that good on being on camera. And something like this, where it looks small, sleek, and almost like a bit of a toy camera, quote unquote, this is something that is actually going to help your subject and help people that you're filming derive a much more natural character out of them than something that's going to be bigger, more professional looking, and subsequently more intimidating. Reason number 2, this has 4K. Now, I don't use 4K that much. I actually think that you can get away with using 1080p in 90% of the times. Why? Because if you're producing content that is short form, it is going to be consumed on your smartphone, and people don't watch 4K stuff on their smartphone unless you're doing something very big, in which if you are, this camera actually has the 4K to offer. But the 1080p is very good out of this, very crisp. The 4K is really good as well. And that links also with reason number 3 quite nicely. It has this feature that it takes from the Panasonic GH5, which, as I said, is like the top of the line video camera that Panasonic does, which is called 4K live cropping. Now, what 4K live cropping does is that it takes the full 4K sort of field that you get, and then it crops into an 1080p resolution, and it does like a pan. And there's 2 versions. There's a 20 seconds and a 40 seconds version, and you can customize it to make it like diagonal, to make it left to right or right to left. Very cool when you're traveling, very cool when you're on the go, when you don't have a slider. You just put it up on a tripod or somewhere that's just steady, dial in that 4K live cropping thing, and it gets a very smooth pan of either a product that you're shooting or indeed a landscape. So really nice little nifty feature. Now, another reason, which is like a bonus, it's not like a main feature, but I certainly really like it, is that this camera has in-body charging. Now, of course, you can go out and buy an independent, like individual charging unit for your battery and charge more than one battery on the go. But having an in-body function where you can plug it into an external battery and have it charging your backpack, or even just minimize, needing to carry like an AC adapter unit with you all the time when you're on the go. Really cool, really appreciate that, okay? Now, the 5th reason is that this camera is actually a good vlogging camera because of the IBIS and the size. Now, a lot of people overlook this camera because they think, in the traditional way of thinking about things, that it is quite limited. There's no flip out screen, yeah? There's no mic input, and Panasonic has pretty bad autofocus. But let me give you a few tips that are going to be great at overcoming 2 out of these 3 issues. First of all, in terms of not being able to frame your shots because you don't have a flip out screen, you're going to be using an ND filter or just a UV filter that is going to be on the front elements of your camera. I use a UV filter because I just like having my front elements protected in case there's going to be any scratches or anything that's going to get in the way. But what happens is, you see how this UV filter or an ND filter will have this reflective element. Yeah, you see how there's like a reflection going on. So what happens is, if you have, obviously this is not a vlogging lens because this is a 45mm, you need something a lot wider. But if you take a lens with either an ND or a UV filter on the front element. If you point it at yourself, the reflection, in the reflection, if you get your mouth in the reflection, not your eyes, not your forehead, not your nose, your mouth, it's actually gonna align to give you a perfect frame. You're gonna be in perfect frame, pretty much like this, where you have a bit of space up here, you got a bit of space on the sides, and you're gonna be in perfect frame without even needing a flip out screen. The next thing that people are gonna shout about and complain is that this doesn't have good autofocus. Panasonic does offer a autofocus, but it's not reliable. Okay, but what you do is you take this camera, you place it onto your knee, onto your kneecap, yeah? And from your knee, you focus onto your shoe or your foot. And what happens is the distance that you have between the camera when it's on the knee and the foot is actually very similar to the distance between the face and this sort of distance right here when you're holding it. It's approximately the same, right? So once you have your foot or your shoe in focus from your knee, when you bring it up, get your mouth in the reflection in the UV filter or the ND filter, and you're pretty much good to go. And because of how small it is, you can like grab it like a little brick in one hand with no extra things sticking out of it. Very good, very compact because of the IBIS as well. Really cool for when you're traveling around and vlogging your journey. Now, of course, it doesn't have a mic input, which is a bit of a downer, but quite frankly speaking, if you have an external dictaphone or a lav mic where you're capturing sound externally, it's actually going to give you much better quality when you bypass your camera preamps than if you just do it in camera recording. So that's a little bonus tip for you in terms of recording and filming. Now, there is another video on my YouTube channel in terms of what settings I use that I think are the best settings for the GX80. Over the last 2 years, I've filmed most of my content with this camera, and this is the kind of quality that I managed to get out of it.
Do you have a philosophy of life, Mr. Getty?
You know, they often say, picture is worth 1,000 words. But what if we tell your story in 24 frames per second?
My advice to a lot of people that are just starting out in the realm of videography and filmmaking is that often people just look towards the best camera that money can buy on the market right now. But instead of doing that, and instead of going down that rabbit hole of spending money, look at some of the older gear, look at some of the things that people who have had gear for a long time and have managed to learn their gear inside out, how they're actually able to push that to its fullest capacity, and what you can actually achieve with something that is cheaper and more frugal. Because let me tell you, it's amazing. It's an amazing feeling knowing that you can travel with like a small 300-pound setup and go anywhere and actually capture some very decent footage. You know, that is very liberating in a way. And knowing that you don't need to rely on all the fancier equipment that is out there right now on the market. Anyway, guys, I hope you found this video useful. Check out some of the other videos on my channel that have been shot with the GX80. And like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.